Great. Welcome, everyone. This is a part of the summer school that every year we really look forward to, and it's wonderful to be back to be doing the late afternoon seminars. The idea of the late afternoon seminars, we always try to do different outreaches or different projects in the late afternoon seminars to try to stimulate discussions about how methods are being applied. And so how the methods that you're studying in the summer school are being applied in research in the discipline. And one of the things that I think this is to Glauco's credit this year is Glauco decided to try to bring, instead of bringing the more senior faculty in the summer school to talk about their research, I think one of the interesting opportunities we have this semester or this session is that we're going to be hearing from many of the faculty who actually started in the summer school either as students and then graduated to becoming TAs and now are also faculty members, as is the case of Natália. And next week we're going to have, if I'm remembering correctly, we're going to have Professor Soledad Perliman Archiz from Stanford University. I actually met Soledad when she was a student in poli-sci at Texas A&M. So I can really say that another person that we saw migrate to becoming a professor where she is now at Stanford University. And the last person we have the last week is Professor Jonathan Phillips, who is somebody who we met as already as a faculty member when he joined our school. So I think it's a great opportunity to learn about young researchers that are doing really innovative applications in the discipline and a chance to try to understand some of these challenges. But it's a special privilege to introduce Natália for me because this is somebody who I think I always tell the stories, and I'm going to embarrass you. But Natália, when I was my first class that I taught when I became a professor in the Department of Political Science as an undergrad, she was in my class at night. I was teaching statistical inference, and I saw Natália in the class, and I just thought, I said, oh, well, one of the texts we're going to use is Designing Social Inquiry, Gary King, blah, blah, blah. And I put the entire textbook in the folder so you guys can read it. I think it's really important to read this book. And Natália came to the next class and the whole book was highlighted. And she was like, I have so many questions. And I was like, you know, calm down. This is only week 2, you know. So I think this tells a really good story of Natália, who she is. And her commitment to as a scholar and as a student. She's been a joy to work with. So Natália did her undergraduate. She did an Iniciación Científica with me, focusing on gender. Then she did her master's in the department. I was her advisor. And then she did her doctoral studies. And in her doctoral studies, we asked Professor Guy Witten, who's teaching in the summer school the 3rd week, to co-advise Natália's dissertation. So she wrote her dissertation with both Guy and I as supervisors. And as part of her work already in her doctorate, she started to work with us as the TA for the time series modules. So another opportunity, really great to see that how a student that came from being an undergrad, starting to do research, started to do training in the department. She went abroad during her doctoral studies to do a year working with Professor Witten at Texas A&M to do training on compositional models in time series. So she was funded by FAPESP to spend a year abroad and then came back. And now she is a postdoc at Wesleyan University, and she's here in the summer school teaching the first week of time series, and next week we'll be co-teaching the time series cross-section together. So I think this is she's a really great person to talk about her work, but also a really good example of what the summer school really hopes to be, right? Because I think Natália probably has about 8 summer schools as a student, as a TA, now as a faculty, right? And that's what we believe the summer school is. The summer school is something that Glauco and I and Manuel, right? We live for the summer school every year because for us, it's a chance to get back to the basics, to get back to things that we really need to deepen our discussion, our understanding. And so it's nerd heaven, right? To get a bunch of us that care about these issues to meet together and thinking about how we can train students in this area. So I'm going to just end talking about that part of in her dissertation. As I explained, Natália left to be at Texas A&M. That meant that she also did something really important, which I think was a big step, was to broaden her research agenda to start to do work on the United States as well as Brazil to do comparative research. So her dissertation chapters, one of the dissertation chapters looked at the incumbency advantage using time series cross-section data set in the United States and revisiting some of the literature that is being talked about on debates in the US around incumbency advantages, thinking that someday she'll also come back to Brazil and do some of this work. She's done a lot of really interesting work with Professor Witten after her dissertation, and they're continuing to develop research on multinomial models and the visualization of statistical inference on multinomial models. And with me, we continue to do a lot of work on presidential approval in Latin America. And Natália has done a lot of work, especially in her dissertation, looking at gender dynamics and presidential approval, which I think is really interesting because Natália's research is really an example of taking on in a dissertation different methods, trying to gain expertise comparatively, but also about how to write a dissertation that shows expertise in methods, right? So I'm really proud of Natália, and I think all of the highlighting she did to the designing social research book, it paid off, right? Because she really loved what she discovered in that textbook, and she's continued to grow. So we're really happy to have Natália here today for the first seminar. She's going to be talking about media agenda setting around racism, which is very different from her dissertation work. I think it shows kind of all the interesting work she's doing now. So welcome, Natália, and great to have you.
First of all, thank you very much, Lorena, for presenting me. And I think your presentation is much better than my presentation would be about myself. So thank you. And I would like to thank Glauco, Manuel, and all the coordination of the summer school for giving me the opportunity to present my work in progress. So I'm very excited to present today. So let's talk about it. So first, I'd like to talk a little bit about myself. So as Lorena said, I have a bachelor's degree in social science, a master and a PhD in political science from University of São Paulo. And my research interests include public opinion, but also political methodology and public policy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the summer school and me, of course. So I started as a student in 2013. And it was the first time that I was taking a class entirely in English and with many international colleagues in the class. And it was a very challenging time for me. I remember that I suffered a lot. But since then, I have attended several classes in the summer school for several years. And more recently, before the pandemic, I was invited to be the TA for the time series and time series classes, and I really enjoy a lot, particularly because Professor Lorena, Professor Guy Witten, and Professor Andy Phillips, they were really nice and helped me to gain confidence conducting the labs and also knowing more in depth the content that is involved in class. So now this year I am very, very glad to be here, serving as instructor for the first and the second modules of the time series track. And my participation in the school throughout those years has provided me opportunity not only of knowing new methods and engaging with researchers from different countries, learning about their research, but also I had the privilege of meeting during the summer school my PhD co-advisor, as Lorena was telling, Professor Guy Witten, and also the two members of my defense committee, Professor Andy Phillips and Professor Larry Williams. So for me, the summer school was an incredible opportunity, not only for learning a method that I applied in my dissertation, but also to meeting really nice people that helped me to improve my dissertation, and also to think about my career, academic career. So I'm very happy to be here, as I said, and also I'm very thankful for the school, for all the opportunities that I gained here. And also I have to say that Lorena was not only for me, but for many of her students, she provided us a lot of encouragement to take classes that was really hard for us. But we as Luis Cantarelli and Pedro can tell, we are here and we survived, and we are we are learning every year a little bit more. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about myself nowadays. So I am a postdoctoral research fellow at Wesleyan University, that is in the state of Connecticut. And there I am affiliated with the Hazel Quantitative Analysis Center, in which I teach a class on survey design and analysis. And also I am affiliated with the Wesleyan Media Project, which is a project that has a long history of tracking advertising in federal elections. Before it is the successor of the Wisconsin advertising project that tracked political advertising since 1998. And this project is led by Dr. Erica Franken-Fowler, that it is my supervisor at Wesleyan, but also for two other researchers in other two American universities. I am also a member of the Collaborative on Media and Messaging for Health and Social Policy, the COMHSP. And this is an interdisciplinary team of researchers from 3 different universities, from Wesleyan University, University of Minnesota, and Cornell University, in which we investigate how media and messaging shape opinions, attitudes, and also behaviors of multiple audience. And our focus is particularly in health and social policy. So today, I'm going to talk about one of the research that we have been conducting that I have been conducting with other colleagues in the COM team. So the motivation for this research is that we are interested in looking at how the media has been covering two race-related concepts. One of them is racism, and the other one is critical race theory. This in the context of the United States. Scholars have demonstrated throughout many studies that news media has a really important role in shaping broader public discussions, but also with its agenda setting power, but also has can reflect the public opinion discussion. And so in this sense, the understanding the news media is particularly relevant when we are thinking about public policy, but also public opinion. So in this paper, we believe that we focus only in these two race-related terms because we believe that those two discourses are linked and serve as separate sides of the same broader discussion and debate over the extent and persistence of racial inequality in the United States. As most of you are aware, racial inequality is not a an issue that has a long history. United States has a long history of racial inequality, and for us, understanding about how the media has been focused on racism, particularly in the last years, and especially after the George Floyd's death, it is a relevant topic to understand more about what is being talking about racism and race in the country. So besides, as I mentioned, besides racism, we are also investigating how the media is talking about critical race theory. For the audience that is outside of the United States, critical race theory sounds like something weird that you have no idea about what it is. For me, at least, when I went to US, I had no clue about what was the critical race theory. So what I discovered is that critical race theory, or CRT, is an academic theoretical framework largely confined to the legal studies and humanities before it becoming a campaign and news media talking point in the last years. So the discussion more recently using CRT has been promoted by many conservatives that have claimed, with little evidence, that this philosophy has infiltrated public schools and is creating antagonism around issues related to race. So here, for instance, you can see some protests of people like saying, no CRT in our schools. This second photo is saying education, not indoctrination, stop critical race theory now. You even have this other one saying CRT is actually saying that CRT it is creating racial tensions. So basically we select those two race-related terms as different, providing us different understanding of how the discourse and the debate about race is being made in the country. So our research objective is to understand which factors drive variation in local TV news coverage of racism and CRT. So we are focused here mainly on local TV news. And understanding, as I said, understanding the media attention to this topic is particularly relevant, as local TV news coverage plays a crucial role in shaping public opinion's perceptions and also in influencing political agendas. And also we have evidence that a significant portion of the American public relies on local TV news as a key news source. Let me move over here. Okay. So our data, we are conducting here a quantitative analysis. So we are using as our dependent variable a broad corpus of daily newscasts across the U.S. So from all the 210 media markets and 758 local TV stations. So it is a very broad corpus of daily newscasts. And our data starts on January of 2020 up to March of the last year, 2023. And what we did, we collect all the content that was all the corpus from these newscasts, and then we search it in those transcriptions, in the transcriptions from those newscasts for mentions of racism and CRT, critical race theory. So our corpus includes all programs that are usually 30 minute segments of text. We consider any program that runs in more than 7 media markets should be national, and we did not included any national or the national programs were not included in our analysis because we are focused mainly on local TV news. We also included all stations affiliated with the 4 major networks, and we excluded non-affiliated stations, such as the Spanish-speaking one, Telemundo. And for this set of mentions, we created a 7-day running averages for each station because we see a lot of variation across the days of the week. So we created this 7-day running average to take into account this feature of the data. So now moving to show a little bit about the data. So here we have over time the number of mentions of CRT in the local TV news. One thing that I want to mention is that you see since 2020, right? So one thing that I want to mention is this spike in the first semester of 2020. And this is related to the death of George Floyd, right? And that spiked a lot of mass protests against racism and the police brutality against the black community. After the George Floyd's death, you can see that we see a decrease on the news media mentions of racism, but still the average is higher than compared to the previous before. Now I'm showing the number of mentions of CRT in the local TV news over time too. You can see clearly here that we had basically no mentions of CRT before 2021. So we see that the attention to this issue started in the spring of 2021, right? And that's interesting to show that coincide with the period in which the students are going back to school and the return of the classes in the context of the pandemic. So we see a lot of spikes across time, as we see as in the case for the racism mentions. And here, just to compare side by side, I'm showing the mentions for racism and the mentions for the CRT on the right hand side of the figure. But it is also interesting for us to look at the geographic variation on the number of mentions of racism and CRT across the stations in the United States. So here we are showing in darker color those stations that had a higher number of mentions to this issue. So basically, they talked a lot about this issue, about racism. So we see over here and over here a lot of attention to racism. And now I can show you the mentions to CRT across the station. And you can see clearly that the focus of those mentions are not in the same, geographically are not in the same place, right? And just to compare side by side, you see the differences. All right, so now I'm going to move to explain, those are our dependent variables. So to explain now our explanatory variables. So the variables that we think that are relevant to explain the variation on the media mentions of those two subjects. So we use social demographic, social and political factors as relevant variables to predict media mention of those subjects. And so we included also political factor like Trump 2016 vote share to understand the ideology of the market. We also included population, the percentage of 65 years or old, the percentage of black, the percentage of homeowners, if it is a state capital, the percentage of rural, the percentage of under 18, and if it is a station owned by Sinclair or not. Sinclair is a company that is known by the literature as providing news that lean more to the conservative side. So that's why we included a binary indicator for that, to capture that impact. And in terms of modeling strategies, we use two different strategies. One of them, we use we run a static analysis in which we run panel-linear models with fixed facts, but also we run a dynamic analysis in which we run our panel unit root diagnostics, which my students should know by now. And both of the so our test suggests that both DV and IVs are stationary, and we run ARGL models, which are the autoregressive distributed lag models. So for brevity, the results of both analyses are very similar. So for brevity, I'm going to just show the results from the static analysis. So here I have the results from the regression, the predictors of mentions of racism in local news. So I can understand that it's very small, so I'm going to translate for you what the table is showing. So we see that there is a negative and statistically significant impact of Trump 2016 vote share on the number of racism mentioned in the local news, right? Indicating that in those markets that had that Trump received more votes, they were less likely to have to mention racism in the news, right? So besides that, we have that population is also statistically significant. So higher population, places with more populace would have more mentions of racism. Places with higher percentage of black population would have a higher number of mentions of racism. And we also observed that Sinclair stations were less likely to mention racism in their news. And here I'm presenting results for CRT. So for CRT, what we find is basically almost the completely opposite. So we find that in those places that Trump received a lot of votes in 2016, they are the places in which the media mention more CRT, right? So when so the media is giving to the vote for the voters that are more conservative. For places in which they have more conservative voters, the media is giving more CRT content compared to places with less conservative voters, and the opposite for racism. So in places in which we have more conservative voters, we would have less. The media would focus less in racism, in their content, their news content. So to summarize a little bit and discuss, our analysis suggests that attention to racism spiked predictably after the protests of the summer 2020, after the death of George Floyd. And as attention to this topic, as attention to racism waned, the news media found another race-related issue to focus on, especially in 2021. And that issue was critical race theory, right? So after attention to racism waned, we see that critical race theory found its way in the media debate about race. So this attention was not equally distributed, and the focus of the CRT discussion was sharper in areas that had more conservative voters. Also, the news production, our results suggest that the news production patterns are responsive to perceived audience demand and interests, right? So in places in which you have more liberals or more conservatives, you would have different content. And the geography and ownership of the news is important in shaping its content, like the Sinclair on stations that are more likely to produce to talk about CRT and less likely to talk about racism. With the political and to finalize, with the political parties in the United States increasingly polarized around racial justice issues, these questions are, we think that these questions are of great importance for considering the future direction of racial progress in the United States. So with that, I finalize now. Thank you so much for your attention.
Okay, so now we're back to have a discussion. Usually what we try to do, we encourage, is we want the questions to come first from students. Yes? So we encourage students that are sitting in the room to, if anyone wants to come up and ask a question. And what we encourage is if you can ask your question by first introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about where you're from, what class you're taking in the school, and then ask your question. Yes?
Can I?
And just we're going to ask for everyone to keep speaking in the microphone because we're live on YouTube. And if not, the people who are online can't hear us. Yes.
So, okay. Hi, everyone. So, my name is Natália. I'm a PhD student here at the department. My advisor is Professor Janine Onuki. Nachi, first of all, wonderful presentation. It's very nice to see you again, like after a long time. My question is actually more related to it's not related to the methodology. It's actually more a curiosity. Why don't you begin the time that you take for your research? Why it's 2020 and not 2013? Because I'm studying right now the Black Lives Matter movement, and since it started back in 2013, I wonder if it's not interesting for you to see since that time to now, not only from 2020 to 2023, but go back since 2013 when it all began, all that discussion may have begun. It's more a curiosity.
Okay. Thank you. Great question. Yes. Okay, does anyone else? If we can take a round of questions? Yes? Yes, come. We love that students have lots of questions. We like nerd heaven is students with questions. So tell us who you are. And you didn't tell us what you were studying this week.
I studied the Black Lives Matter movement.
This week.
This week.
Oh, I'm not.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Brown. I'm from the University of Missouri. I'm studying political science, a PhD, and here I'm doing case studies and regression and the follow-up to that. Okay. My question is not about the methods, it's just out of curiosity as well. I wonder, I was looking at the pictures that you have, and there was this sign about Latinos against critical race theory. And I wonder, because I don't know much about critical race, I don't know anything, to be honest. I wonder if critical race theories, it's limited to just studying like the Black Lives Matter movement, or if it includes other races, because from what I understand, and I could understand wrong, right? I don't know if I'm right. Mm-hmm. In the US, people of color, it doesn't matter if you're Black or Latino or Chinese, it doesn't matter if you're of a lighter skin tone, you are treated the same if you're not white. And so I find that to be a little interesting when they have the sign like Latinos against critical race theory. That's my question.
Great. Okay, Natalia, I think those are the two good questions, and then we can go around again. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Definitely. Thank you so much for both of you. Thank you, Nachi. Happy to see you too. So definitely this is a great suggestion to start before in time. So we decided to analyze this time for this paper in particular only since 2020, just for I believe that we had data processed that was easily that would give us that would run the analysis and would help us to get an understanding of the issue since 2020. So I can definitely talk to the team and see how, if it is possible for us to extend up to at least a few years before, right? But also for us was interesting to see during this time that in which we have, so focusing since in 2020 to see the impact as well, looking at over time dimensions of racism and CRT, and thinking about the impact that the pandemic had in the United States, right? So the Black community suffered a lot, was hardly hit by the pandemic. So and our interest was particularly in that period, but definitely it makes sense for us to extend the analysis for the period before, and we would have to take into account other factors that would be relevant for previous years. But thank you so much for this, and I'm happy that you are studying this issue too. And Denise, thank you for your comment. That's really a great comment, and thank you for calling attention to this. Yes, the CRT is not only the discussion that those conservatives are bringing around CRT is not only about the Black community. It's about all the other, everybody else besides the white community. So that includes the Latinos, and also the Black and Asians and others. So definitely, you are right. That is not that the criticism is not only focused on the Black community. And what they are discussing is the conservatives. What they are understanding is that by talking about the history of the country, the history of slave and etc., and also talking about the other races, and we would be creating some antagonism that would not be the case. So it's not only restrict to the Black community, but in fact that is one of the main one that is being they are focused on. How we understanding and how we are learning racism in these schools. And in fact, we have studies that showed, for instance, if you survey research showing that if you ask the respondents, the American citizens, if they support to teach racism in the schools, and then you ask another sample of the survey if they support teaching critical race theory in the schools, there is a larger portion of the respondents that say that they support teaching racism as compared to CRT. So there is also this that it was the CRT was gained a lot of attention among the public in a negative way. So there is evidence showing that the public has, among those that have some idea about what is CRT, most of them have negative opinions. Thank you.
Okay, so Magda, and then yes. Okay. No, fine. Ya. Then you can come up too.
Thanks, Natália, for your presentation. I think it's really very interesting to better understand the geography of, let's say, racist issues in the U.S. and maybe in Brazil. It could be the case as well. But mine is a clarification question. And what the story is. Let me see if I understood. What you said is what I listened. Because you said that there is a variation in the territory regarding broadcasting or news covering of racism. My first question is, what these news let's say podcasts or so, how did you analyze them? Because it's through the word racism. Are they related to charging racist behavior? What's the content of the dependent variable? In the end, how it is related to the independent variables? Let me pose very clearly my question. I would expect that in municipalities where Trump's voters are the majority, to have more cases of racism. But what explains media coverage of racism? Because there might be another force playing on the game, so as there is a denunciation. Otherwise, there won't be denunciation. So there is something missing in the story or in the data. So I would ask you to clarify the whole story and the mechanism, because the presence of racists or the presence of a majority or even a plurality of racist voters would explain cases of racism, but not necessarily media denunciation or so. That's what I'm trying to understand. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. And you're not. Did you introduce yourself?
And my name is Marta Hetty, and I'm a professor at the department.
My name is Alexander Sherstabitov. I'm a visiting researcher at IRI USP. Thank you, Natalia. It was really interesting. I like the model. However, I have a question that is quite specific, I guess. It's about the predictors, and maybe the answer is obvious and very short. However, since I'm not a big specialist in American politics, I'm just curious about that. So the question is about Trump vote share. What is the justification of use this predictor as the indicator of conservative support? To my mind, maybe it's not, but at that elections, there was a huge anti-rating of Hillary Clinton, and maybe it's not a very good indicator of conservative support. So is there a kind of justification, or maybe it's quite obvious and I just not aware of that? Thank you.
Great. Okay, so I think, should we go, do you want, I think those were super hard questions, right? We're going to give Natalia work. So then after Luis, and remind me your name? Luis too? So the next session is the Luis session. Okay, and then, okay. I love this. Okay, good. Go.
All right. So thank you, Marta. Your questions are really great. So the first one, it is, so let's think about. So you're asking about the content of the dependent variable. So it is basically what was in the newscast, what was that the journalist was talking about, or the person that was in that program. What was the content of that? So it could be related to the number of cases of COVID, the weather, or whatever. And what we capture, so from the transcript from the news, we capture, we select, we looked for how many times racism, the word racism was mentioned, and how many times of that the expression critical race theory was mentioned. And that was the way that we created our variable. So we didn't search, for instance, for racist. We only searched for racism. So when I look at and see that the results showing that the Trump voters in locations, in areas in which Trump had a higher percentage of votes, we had more citation of racism, I can see that, or less citation of racism, I can see that the local news media talked less about racism. So it didn't, while in places in which he had less votes in that election, the media talked more about racism, about this issue. So it was an issue that was relevant. So our understanding is that the news media is understanding their audience in those locations, and it is delivering content that is going to attend their interests. So in places in which Trump received more votes, which means that are more conservative, they are talking less about racism. And they are talking more, and they are talking more about critical race theory. So they are saying, look what they're they're talking about legislation regarding critical race theory, about the return of the particularly in the context of the schools and the return to the classes and what is going to be taught in the classes. So that is so that's why we are not looking at racist and anything else, only racism and critical race theory. Makes sense? Thank you. I forgot your name. Alexandro. Thank you, Alexandro, too. So you're saying that, so your question was about using the Trump 2016 vote share as a key predictor of the number of mentions, right, of racism and CRT. Yes, your criticism about that some voters may had changed their opinion from 2016 to 2020, but still we see that, at least from what I know about the United States, and I have to be honest here that I am not a specialist about that country. So from I see is that the politics doesn't change a lot in terms of, I would not expect that in locations in which he received a lot of votes in 2016 would be completely different from places in which he, for instance, received votes in 2020. So of course, it's not, we see that the audience, the ideology of the audience may have changed a little bit, but I don't see like completely different movements. I don't see any expectation of that. And in the absence of another variable that could measure the ideology of the public, we use that one. So yes, if we had like a measure that could help us to capture the ideology of the public in that area, would be better than having data from the last election and also having many issues related to that, like to the fact that voters changing their minds, but also the dynamic of the election. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Luis and Luis. Yes.
Luis and Luis.
Hi everyone, I'm Luis. I'm a PhD student here at the department, and I'm the TA for the time series track. Congratulations for your work, Natália. My question is, from what I understood, what you're talking about is that different communities, especially based on their conservative level and in their racial patterns, are the medias on those communities are going to frame events differently. So those who choose to use more the term racism are usually communities where you have less conservatives, and communities where the media is framing the events as critical race theory are making a decision to not use the word racism and trying to blame it on black people. They are the ones making this issue, separating society and etc. But what they're doing is taking critical. So so what they're doing is they're taking sort of a determination of what critical race theory is actually trying to do, and putting the blame on that. So I have a question that is the following. As a community is increasingly progressive, could media news be talking about critical race theory not in a scapegoat way, but actually talking properly about it as a way to discuss racism? So you could think that the effect, if you go really high on progressivism on a community, or if it's a really black community, that it could start going back up again. And the other question is, you can see that the effect you expected is happening. So it goes the opposite ways. It seems like that is a substitution of the word. It's a decision of framing. But what is happening with total reporting on the news? Because if both are reporting the same thing, and there's a positive effect for critical race theory and a negative effect for racism, could it be that some of them are talking more about the issue, even though the effects are there? Could it be that communities where the media is using the term racism more are also spending more hours talking on the issue and the others talking less? Do you look at that also? Because it could be that if you have the effect, but also the amount of coverage is also different too. So I think that these are my main questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Natália. Thank you so much for your lecture. I'm Luis Antonio. I'm a master's degree student here at the University of São Paulo, and I'm taking the course on mixed methods here at the summer school. I would like to ask you about the swing states and how you consider that as one of the variables at the study, because especially looking at the maps regarding the coverage on critical race theory, it caught my attention that states like Florida, Arizona, and Nevada, that are some of the historical swing states at the U.S., are some of the ones that we're discussing just the most. It's just something that caught your attention to as the group studies. That's something that you thought as to operationalize in the regression or the other forms of analysis. So, thank you.
Okay, I can't resist, but just to follow up with what Luis is asking, I think this is a really good point, is you have the 2020 election in the data set, right? So it could be that because race and racism and critical race theory is an issue in the election, the news coverage is peaking because of the election cycle in 2020. And what he's talking about is, where is the media going to talk about this more? In the swing states, right? So you could think about, you could maybe do, going back to Alexandre's question and Luis's question together, look at this, if the 2020 vote versus the 2016 vote, is it the case that the vote is stable like you argue, or did we have swing counties that the vote shifted? And then look at what were people hearing in those places and see if they responded to the treatment. But I said I wasn't going to talk. Okay. So what did you guys do to just see these issues and if they're a problem?
Okay. So I'm going to start with Luis Cantarelli. Thank you, Luis. That's really a good point that you made about. They can be talking about CRT, those progressive community can be talking about, for instance, CRT, and in a different way as compared to those that are less progressive or more conservative. So one strategy. So for in this project, the next we are working on a next paper in which other colleagues from the Wesleyan Media Project, they are looking at the corpus that we have, and they are starting to analyze the content related to when that issue was mentioned. So we want to know, for instance, if when racism was mentioned, who was also mentioned, or which context is being discussed racism, or even the tone is positive, negative, right? So those are definitely great ways in which we should and we will extend the research to better understanding, because only the number of mentions we have is restrictive because we don't know what is being talked about, right? So can be talking about racism, but not like saying fighting against racism, but could be like saying that minimizing racism, for instance. So that's why it's relevant to understand the content. And also you said about the amount of coverage of those topics. So I think you're talking about like the timing, right? But for this analysis, we are capturing the number of citations. But definitely would make sense to also capturing the timing, how much time is spent talking about that issue, right? So it could mention quickly about the racism, but didn't talk a lot in depth about it. Just mention, oh, there is this protest against racism. While other station could be like talking a lot, saying about the implications of the racial inequality, etc. So definitely, this is a good point that we should. I'm going to bring to the group to talk more about it. And Luis Antonio, yes, you brought this issue of the swing states. Honestly, I had not looked at that yet, and this is the first moment that came to my mind. Yes, that's definitely, and you, Lorena, and also now that I am thinking about what Alessandro was asked. Yes, definitely, this is a good good place to look at to see if we can see relevant differences, right? So that's definitely a good suggestion that I'm going to bring to discuss with the team, and definitely. And when you say, Lorena, about the 2020 election, the problem is that I have the racism mentioned since the beginning of the 2020. So I can't. So and then the election happened, while the CRT mentions are coming in the next year, right? So after the election. So the hard part, I thought about including that or thinking more about the 2020, but the hardest part is that it's it comes after, right?
It's not at the same time.
Yeah. But this part of the stability of the votes and the swing states, definitely something interesting that we deserve to pay more attention.
Okay, I remember that we had questions here, Bruno and Bruna. And Bruna and Bruno. Okay.
Oh my.
We're doing like a thing. We're synchronizing, right? Okay, so Bruno and Bruna. Yes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bruna. I'm a PhD student at the University of Missouri. I'm working with Laren, so very nice to meet you. I'm doing the process tracing track, and I'm just curious how you organize your DV. It sounds like a lot of work, so I'm just interested in how you find this information, if you use machine learning, for example, or if you just had a bunch of RAs and they helped you with do it, because it sounds like a lot of work, so I'm just curious.
No, definitely. Definitely. Oh, yes. They had to. Oh, yeah, we have to. Yes. Okay, sorry. Now, Bruno.
Hi, Natália. Thanks for your presentation. My name is Bruno. I'm a PhD candidate, ABD, here at the Department of Political Science. And during your presentation, I was thinking, can you explain about the territorial division? I think you called stations, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of different from the state. And seeing the maps, I think, is there any case where the news broadcasts beyond its border? I mean, in a territory where Trump got less votes, and at the same time where he got more votes. What's the difference between with stations that are far away from the border and only it's more Democrat or Republican. And I've seen the coefficients. Some of them are kind of small. So would you mind to explain about the substantive effects of your findings? And yeah, well, about the fixed effects, about the fixed effects about the stations, or the states, the cities, and you said that for the national news were excluded, right? But some of them is about I think 6 or 7, right? Stations. Do you control by this national, I mean, kind of national stations? I mean, just for example, Midwest or South, because maybe could have an influence on the overall coverage of the region. It's about that. Thanks.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for the question. So, Bruna, so that what happened is that we have, so the Wesleyan Media Project has this contract with the TVI's company, in which we have access to the transcripts. And then we searched for the number of mentions in those transcripts. Using software, so not manually. Yeah, but we use a lot of human coders in the Wesleyan Media Project to classify the political advertisement, but also news, but mainly political advertisements about the issue that is being talked and discussed in the ad. So yes, we have a lot of also investment in human coders, but for this project in particularly, we searched using software. Thank you.
So wait, but just to go to Bruna's question, if it found racism, can you have measurement error? Because it could have been like, that's right, Natalia? So you have the program that says you're web scrapping, right? Or whatever, you're taking down the transcript and you say, this has racism. Is there a chance that you have measurement error? No one checked the data that was, right? So if the transcript says it said this word, you didn't have human coders
looking at back? No.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
Yes, I can definitely investigate if there is, because I know that the corpus is really messy. For instance, there is no clear sign of the stop of. Sometimes it just show up a lot of text, and you don't know when it ended or not the statement that was being talked.
Yes.
So for the part in which we are analyzing the content of the newscast, I saw that we are. This is an important issue, but definitely I can investigate if there is any chance that, for instance, if the word it is separated, right?
Yes.
If there is like a hyphen or right or.
You can do that with machine learning. So if they're familiar, I'm pretty sure they are. So there are like certain ways that you can use machine learning to select exactly what you're looking for, and then you avoid.
We avoid that. Yes, I would check if they did that. And that is the part in which the project in which I am involved at the Wesleyan Media Project, we have also 2 other postdocs, and they work more on this side, and I work more on survey stuff and other stuffs, other analysis. But that's a good point. Thank you. So now, Bruno. Thank you, Bruno. Great questions, as always. So, it is different. The territorial division of of the media there is kind of is different for us and a little bit weird at the first moment, because they have stations and also they have media markets. So for this analysis, we are looking at the station level. That is going deeper at the looking at how can I say looking more more local. But the point that you brought about maybe some stations have the case that it is not, can have some conservative community and also a more progressive community, is something that I would have to check as well, because I know that, for instance, some stations sometimes they are in different states, so you have to make a decision like which state you are going to assign, and the project, the research that we have been, other studies in the project, I saw that they have talked about that, about this decision of which place to assign. So that is a good question, and I'm going to ask if there is the case, and I think that possibly there is a case of that. How can I look at and investigate if there
I think I thought about different research.
Yes. No, definitely. I see where you're going to. Yeah. No. Yes. This is a point that I have to check to understand. And it's also an interesting thing, right? Because if you have like a media, if you have an area that has a community that is splitted, the media is going to focus on which content, right? It's going to provide which content is going to be more. It's going to talk about racism and CRT in a similar way to which one, to a community that has more liberal voters or more conservative voters, right? And you also talked about the substantive effect, that you said that it is what we are seeing is a small coefficient, right? So the impact of the vote share on the number of mentions is quite small. However, still, if we think that, if we think that even one news that was discussed for a long period of time about racism and the racial inequality, even though if it is just one news about that, talking about that topic, it still would have an important impact in the community. But of course, as you are saying, I recognize that the size of the fact it is small, but it's not trivial, right? And the media is also talking about many issues, right? So we have a lot of other topics. Yeah. So definitely it is relevant to also look at the content in which is being discussed. And you finally also talked. You also asked about fixed effects, so fixed effects at the stations that we use, and you mentioned about the national stations. So we didn't consider the national stations, so we didn't include in our analysis.
Stations that coverage, we consider it national if they encompass in 7 stations, right?
Yes.
Conservative and covers more liberal area, maybe could be an impact. The time that racism and CRT is mentioned, just
Natalia, just if you can repeat, because for whoever's online.
Oh, maybe.
Just what Bruno said.
So Bruno is asking if why we didn't consider the media markets, those 7 media markets that we are saying that we consider as national in our analysis, right? Because maybe we have conservative audience in those places. Is that what you are asking?
If you control in your equation about this effect.
Yeah, I didn't control for the fact. Yeah, I just those ones were not included in the analysis at all. Yeah, because the focus was primarily on the local TV news and what is being discussed at the local level. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
Glauco and Manuel, yes, okay.
Hi, Natalia. Thank you very much.
Who are you?
Yeah, do I need to introduce myself? I don't think so, yeah? Yeah, I don't think so, but just in case, my name is Glauco. I'm the local organizer of this summer school. And thank you very much for the presentation, Natalia. It's really emotional to have you here presenting your research. And I'm going to reinforce some of the questions that came previously from Marta and Luis. In the same media market, we can have several broadcasts being considered, right? So might have an effect among them. So for instance, just because one of them says something about racism, the other might reply for it. And moreover, I think it's just similar as comparing or looking at the national level, because they are just trying to fight back something because they want to reinforce. Because you're looking at the mechanism that you're looking at is just because they are trying to offer or supply something that the audience wants, but they shape what the audience wants as well. So they are fighting for a market and they are reinforcing each other. So once you said just use fixed effect, it's just for the local, it's not for the broadcaster, right? So maybe that's a way of you to find out how they are. And another, it's not exactly a question, but the content analysis might be helpful in that stance, because you're just trying to say, oh, the other are saying about racism. That's not racism. That's something else. Because the way your results show us makes us a clear picture of what's going on. We are assuming everybody that they are a kind of denunciation of racist case. It might not be the case. So you are finding smaller results than you should, because maybe they are. You should separate like a content analysis. If they are complaining, they are pro situation. For instance, George Floyd is not a racist. It's not a racist case. It's just something else. It's just police force working. And then you're saying, well, you are including everybody in the same basket and saying all of this is just racism. And well, that's it. And thank you again.
Yes. No, that's definitely a good point. Thank you, Glauco. You are saying being emotional. Don't say that, otherwise I'm going to start to cry. I cry a lot. So.
Wait. Manuel has a question.
Okay. Sorry, Manuel. See, I am jumping.
It's okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. My name is Manuel. I'm a professor of political science here at the department, and I also will teach the regression class in the third week of the summer school. Thanks, Natalia. Was great to see your presentation and the results. Before I ask my questions, I will make a comment to help you, if I may. I think the running average will take care of any measurement error if it's random and it's small, right? Because you are averaging on a 7-day window. So I don't think measurement error will be a big deal if it's small, of course, and if it's random. Now my questions. So I want to go back to the beginning. Was not clear to me, and maybe I missed something. Was your research question a causal one, or you are trying to predict what's happening? Because we are discussing a lot about the effects of vote share, Trump vote share, or the media markets, etc. And if it's causal, a causal question, what's your main hypothesis that you are trying to assess, right? So for me, it's not clear if you're trying just to put all variables that will predict the mentions, the number of mentions of each term, or if you're trying to understand the causal effect of something and what is this something that you're trying to understand. So that's my first question. The second question, since I can't take your class because I'm doing other things, I'll ask you to explain a bit more about the dynamic model, especially the time dimension, because you skipped it. And I would love to learn how the time dimension was modeled, because when we saw the raw data, we saw first an increase before the George Floyd death, murder, and then we saw decrease over time, and probably this has an impact. So I'd love to hear more about how you modeled the time dimension. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Glauco. That's definitely a good point. That they are hearing each other. The stations are hearing, and they are definitely, some content are being basically reproduced from one place to another. So definitely having some way to measure how that is playing out can help us to understand, because that could be an important predictor. So if it is copying the same content from other stations that are around, right, or in states that have a particularly ideology of the voters, that could influence. Yeah, so this is definitely something that I'm going to ask my supervisor, that she studies media in the U.S. So I bet she would have a way to measure that or to account for this. And in terms of so that was the biggest point that you brought out, right? So how can we take into account that? Thank you. So Manuel, you were asking if this is a causal. What is the question of this study, and if it is a causal study? So this is the first study that we are investigating about the impact of social and political factors on the attention to this race-related subjects. So as we don't have other prior studies on that, that is the first study that we are just investigating what can explain the variation. So we don't have a clear causal, how can I say, we are exploring, but at the same time, we are using the results from our analysis, from our regression analysis, to understand what can explain the variation. So we are we take the fact that there is limited knowledge on the subject. So we don't come like with a lot of, for instance, with a lot of hypotheses regarding all of those variables that we are including in the analysis.
Finally, you were trying to understand variation over time or over space?
Yes, no, that's a great point. That's a great point. That is. So
if you can repeat for the camera.
Okay, so Manuel is asking if we are in this study, if we are analyzing the variation over time or across units of across the space, right? So our statistical analysis is restricted to look at the variation over time. We are visually from the maps. We are gathering some information about the structure of how much attention we have in some states compared to in some places compared to others. So yeah, we are focusing only on the time component, on the temporal component in this paper. But I see a lot of ways of expanding that, looking at the spatial component of the data. And when you asked about the dynamic model, so the way that we model the data here, we included a leg of the dependent variable on the right-hand side. And as one problem here, as we don't have a lot of variation, or we don't have variation on our explanatory variables over time in the stations. So we are varying across the stations, but we are not varying because we don't have, for instance, we don't have data daily on the population per 100, right? So of course we could interpolate, but there is no disaggregated data at the socioeconomic disaggregated data for us. So that's why we have some restriction to the analysis. But still, with that model in which we are including at the right-hand side, the DV, we were able to calculate the short run effect and the long run effect. And both of them are statistically significant, which means that the short-term effect is saying that for those places that had that has a community that is more conservative, have more news in the short term, talking about CRT, less talking about racism, and also the long term. So we found effects at both levels. But for here, I was not sure about how much time I would spend in the first slides. I decided to just present the static model.
Okay. Do we have any more questions? We're good? Okay. Thank you very much, Natália. I think this was a fantastic, really good conversation. I want to encourage, I think for those of you who are you're interested and you want to talk, Natália is very accessible. So please reach out to her, ask questions, make a point, and that goes for all of the faculty in the school. We wanted to show you guys we were speaking today with Glauco, that part of research is really hard, is this part. It's a work in progress. We need feedback. And what we defend a lot and we say is the mantra is science is a collective undertaking. And so we have to engage in improving other people's work, being able to learn, being able to share, being able to not argue away the problems, but recognize and think deeply about how to solve them. Mm-hmm. And I think this was a great seminar of not defending, not saying I'm right, saying I'm going to write that down. I'm going to look into this. I don't know. This is the limitation of this research. I think this is really important for us to help mentor students that this is a responsible way to defend a dissertation or defend a paper. It's not to say you're wrong, right? But it's to have this really difficult substantive conversations. So Natália, I think you did I just want to say, taking the notes, remembering the name of each person, you didn't let any point, slip by. So I think that's a really example of, for all of us, right? When you defend your next paper, you have your qualifying paper, you go to do your defense of your dissertation. This is a really good model of trying to take really rigorous notes and making sure to defend. And don't feel afraid to to go through it really carefully. It seems like sometimes, oh, I have to talk about all of these points. Yes, you have to talk about all about these points because the professor read the work. He wants to hear what you did, right? So this is a good example of that too. We're back we're beating the rain, which is amazing. I can't believe that it's still not raining. We'll be back tomorrow morning for classes, everybody. We're looking forward to having you. I don't know, Glauco, if there's any announcements. No? And we really hope you come next week too to hear Soledad. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Obrigada, Glauco.